and I would like to recap of the day one. So yesterday there was commitment from 4 organizations: FAO, WHO, UNEP, and WAHA, and we all are committed to work together for surveillance, prevention, and control of zoonotic influenza, which is emerging at the human-animal environment interfaces. And there was session on global and regional situation of zoonotic influenza, and primarily avian influenza in the Asia-Pacific region. And our colleague from WA made presentation how low pathogenic and highly pathogenic avian influenza are emerging, re-emerging, and affecting agriculture production as well as wildlife, migratory birds. Asia-Pacific. From WHO perspective, it was highlighted that it is important to do surveillance of swine influenza because pigs are hosting several influenza viruses, avian, swine, and human influenza viruses. So there is chance of mutation, and also it is caused by same H1, H1, H2, H3, same as seasonal influenza virus. We have seasonal influenza virus, but it doesn't work against swine influenza viruses. So that's why surveillance of swine influenza is very, very important. And it is also highlighted that from WHO perspective, use of poultry vaccine using avian influenza H9N2 is a matter of concern. After that, there was also a presentation from new perspective from environmental sector by UNEP. And it was presented that how anthropogenic activities destroy natural habitat of migratory birds and increase the spillover and spread of new avian influenza virus. So we need a holistic multidisciplinary approach at the human, animal, plant, and environmental interfaces. That is, healthy environment and nature conservation, sustainable agricultural production are critical for healthy life and prevention of infectious diseases of epidemic and pandemic potential, including zoonotic influenza. Then we had a presentation as well as panel discussion, which was attended by World Organization for Animal Health Reference Laboratory for Avian Influenza in China, India, and Japan. And India shared evidence-based epidemiological information based on genetic sequencing to inform policy decision on early warning, integrated and/or coordinated surveillance, prevention and control of avian influenza. So these three were collaborating reference laboratory for avian influenza. They also share information on vaccination and surveillance of avian influenza. They also highlighted how migratory birds are playing an important role in avian influenza virus evolution and spread of novel avian influenza viruses around the world. It was also highlighted that active surveillance of avian influenza virus is very expensive, but critical for early detection of novel avian influenza viruses. From economic perspective, passive surveillance should continue for early detection of novel avian influenza viruses. The major challenge is that avian influenza viruses are manifested in subclinical form, not only in migratory birds, but also on waterfowl and crows. And China also share the scope of developing universal, highly pathogenic avian influenza H5, H7 vaccine for poultry. And all panelists highlighted the close collaboration between human and animal health sector for sharing data and information of avian influenza viruses is important, although it is not always easy, but we have to focus on that aspect. So overall, there was discussion about surveillance and vaccination, and China is doing great job, and they have active surveillance system in place, and that's why human cases due to new avian influenza viruses have been detected and reported to WHO. So that is very, very important, even during COVID-19 pandemic. So the key message is that because of COVID-19 pandemic, avian influenza surveillance, prevention, control activities, it was put on hold, or it did not get due attention. But now we are in new normal situation. We should try to strengthen surveillance of avian influenza viruses, which is very critical to prevent future pandemic. And it is also important that we all have to work together for surveillance, prevention, and control of avian influenza viruses. Now today we have presentation, particularly focusing on country experience in zoonotic influenza surveillance. And we have invited 4 speakers: Republic of Korea, Cambodia, Malaysia, and Bangladesh. And we are going to highlight how it is important for effective information exchange and multi-sectoral collaboration for surveillance, prevention, control of, and response to avian influenza outbreaks, and how we can do zoonotic influenza sampling and laboratory diagnostics, and what are the good practices of influenza surveillance in humans, and last but not least, how we can do surveillance of avian influenza in backyard farming. So first, I would like to invite Mr. Sonjong Bae from Korea Disease Control and Prevention Agency. Presently, he is working with WHO, WIPRO. So I would like to request Mr. Sonjong Bae to make presentation. As I mentioned, he will be helping us to understand how effective information exchange and multi-sector collaboration is done in Republic of Korea.
Thank you, Doctor, for introduction and introduce me. Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Sunjong Bae, and over the past 1.5 years, I have worked with the preparedness and response systems at the KDCA to manage potential avian influenza outbreaks. For the next 10 minutes, I will cover the information exchange system for AI outbreak through its surveillance methods in the Republic of Korea. Okay, next slide, please. Yeah, in this presentation, we will explore the AI virus prevention efforts in the Republic of Korea, focusing on 3 main aspects. First, we will discuss the multi-sectoral collaboration among key government agencies, including KDCA, APAQ, and NWIDC. Next, we will examine the prior slide. Next, we will examine the surveillance systems and information exchange mechanism that enable effective monitoring and prevention of AI virus infections in humans. Finally, we will look at how the One Health approach is being implemented through the integration of information systems across these agencies, facilitating a more efficient response to potential outbreaks and reducing the risk of human transmission. Next slide, please. Okay, before we dive into the main contents of the presentation, I'd like to provide a brief overview of AI and AI human infection to help you better comprehend the material we'll be discussing. As you may know, AI or bird flu is disease caused by infection with the AI type A viruses, then naturally spread among wild aquatic birds worldwide and can infect domestic poultry and other bird and animal species. Although bird flu viruses do not normally infect humans, rare cases of human infection with these viruses have occurred. In humans, the illness can range in severity from no symptoms or mild illness to severe disease that can result in death. It's important to understand the symptoms of AI in humans, which can range from known or mild, such as flu-like symptoms, to severe, such as pneumonia, high fever. The incubation period is typically 2 to 7 days, up to 10 days for AI. Prevention and treatment are crucial in managing the potential outbreak of AI in humans. Proper protective equipment, hand hygiene, and clothing change after the handling birds are important preventive measures. Additionally, antiviral drugs are currently recommended for treating human infections with bird flu. Next slide, please. Yeah. Now that we have a better understanding of AI and AI human infection, let's move on to the discussing the infection routes of AI in humans. This will help us understand how the surveillance system in the Republic of Korea works to prevent and respond to potential outbreaks. AI is primarily shared by infected birds through their salvia, mucus, feces. Human transmission can occur through direct contact with infected birds or their secretions, as well as inhaling contaminated droplets or dust that contain the virus. It is essential to understand these transmission routes to effectively prevent and control AI infections in humans. This understanding also plays a vital role in comprehending the surveillance system and flow of related agencies, which will be discussed in the following slides. Okay, next slide, please. Yep. Let us begin our exploration of the roles and relationships of Korean government between three agencies involved in preventing AI virus. As previously discussed in the earlier slide, the general route of AI infection starts from wild birds to poultry and ultimately leads to humans. As a result, the response of an AI outbreak is dependent on KDC, the Ministry of Environment, the Ministry of Agriculture, Food and Rural Affairs. Next slide, please. First, within the Ministry of Environment, NWIDC is specifically responsible for monitoring wild birds, such as migratory birds, using a regular fecal test. Once an infected bird is identified, the NWIDC relays this information to other relevant agencies by sending an official letter through a confidential and secure intra-system of the Korean government. Next, please. Yeah. APAQ within the MAFRA quickly respond to this information from the NWIDC, as the AI virus can transmit to poultry birds within just a few weeks of detection in wild birds. Consequently, API-Q is expected to throttle or partially within 5 kilometers of the detected AI virus. At this task is completed by many workers. They subsequently become exposed and potentially infected by the AI virus. Because of this, they must also share permanent information with our relevant agencies using the same method and confidential intra-system. Next slide, please. Okay. The exchange of information between these two agencies is key signal for KDCA to prepare and respond to potential exposure to the AI virus outbreak. This precisely the stage at which KDCA would intervene. KDCA is responsible for taking preventive measures for the exposed population, such as monitoring systems for symptoms for 10 days. If anyone exposed develops symptoms such as cough, fever, or vomiting, KDCA reclassifies this as a symptomatic person with suspected infection. They initiate an epidemiological investigation and perform AI human infection test. The management of these exposures is carried out through the KDCA's information system called IS. The IS system can only be assessed by authorized personnel and has the ability to filter information by period, region, infectious disease type, test results, and more. Furthermore, this system is utilized for epidemiological analysis, aiding in the identification of the outbreak source and the development of effective control measure. Next slide, please. This is the IS screen that displays the basic and epidemiological history of suspected or confirmed AI cases. Next slide, please. I think the image explaining English is missing in the screen. So sorry. This is IS screen that displays the monitoring and management of exposures, such as workers who may have come into contact with infected birds or materials and subsequently become exposed or potentially infected with the AI virus. The systems allows for the timely identification and isolation of potentially infected individuals to prevent the spread of the virus. Next slide, please. To date, the information related to the process discussed above has been transferred between the relevant Korean government agencies using confidential and secure intra-system official letters. However, this method makes it difficult to quickly respond to the AI outbreak. As a result, the task force team is currently developing an information sharing platform based on One Health approach. As a part of this effort, the current IS from KDCA has been partially linked to the system from the API-Q, enabling the quick and easy access to information on the farms where AI virus outbreaks have occurred. This integration improves the ability to monitor potential outbreaks and respond quickly to prevent the spread of AI. Next slide. Last slide. In summary, the Republic of Korea's multi-sectoral collaboration, surveillance systems, and information exchange mechanism guided by the One Health approach have proven effective in managing potential outbreaks of AI virus. However, there are still challenges that need to be addressed. Firstly, it is necessary to establish a legal basis for exchanging personal information between related agencies. Secondly, there is a need to continuously develop an integrated system that links links information with the NWIDC, such as the IS currently used in partial connection with APAQ and KDC. As NWIDC has the information about the people who have been exposed to pathogenic wild birds. In conclusion, these ongoing efforts aim to establish a robust and efficient system that can promptly identify and respond to the potential outbreaks of AI virus, ultimately reducing the risk of human transmission through effective collaboration and information exchange among the relevant agencies. By integrating the systems and establishing a legal basis for exchanging personal information, the One Health approach can be implemented more effectively, leading to a more efficient response to potential outbreaks of AI virus. This concludes my presentation. Thank you for your attention.
Yeah, thank you very much. So integrated avian influenza surveillance using One Health approach, that is the key message, and we have to understand legal, administrative, and technical aspect of close collaboration between different sectors, not only human health, animal health, but also environmental sector. Thank you very much. Now I would like to request Dr. Eric Carlson, Institute Pasteur, Cambodia. He's a well-known person in the field of avian influenza, and he has been instrumental on educating not only Cambodian but also Asian countries how we can do sampling and laboratory diagnostics. And recently he attended a global AI surveillance meeting in Rome, and we would like to listen from him how it has been done in Cambodia, particularly environmental sampling and other things. So now the floor is yours, Dr. Eric Carlson.
Thank you, Dr. Gongal. I'm going to just share my screen here and hopefully it'll work. Can you just give me a yes, you can see it?
Yeah.
Can see? Okay. I'm going to talk to you guys today a little bit about how we're advancing zoonotic influenza sampling and laboratory diagnostics. And I think this is a pretty hot topic right now. We did discuss this in Rome last week, how this should be kind of integrated into our system. So I'm just going to talk about it a little bit. Obviously, I don't have a lot of time, so I'm just going to cover a couple things, but I'm happy to answer other questions later as well. So, you know, obviously what we're trying to do here is get to an early warning system for avian influenza to get ahead of these endemic and emerging diseases. And to do this, we need to be able to anticipate the risks of these things, to prevent them, to actively reduce them, to detect them, you know, to be able to find them, and then, of course, to respond, to break any chains of transmission that we might have. But this early warning system really requires active surveillance. We cannot just rely on passive surveillance all the time to get ahead of things. But active surveillance really is costly and it's time consuming. There's issues that surround biosafety, animal welfare, comprehensiveness, all those kinds of things. And it's often not always done in the easiest of places. Sometimes we have to go out into remote areas to really find where wild birds and poultry are mixing and things like that. So really, we've been working on things on improving sampling, but also testing. So can we improve the way we sample, and can we improve the way we test to make early warning better? So the first thing about improving environmental sampling, you know, is it's necessary to validate and verify and incorporate novel technologies into what we're doing. Obviously, you've seen a lot of different kinds of things in the literature and other places that are looking at, you know, feathers, wash water, cage services, swabs, things like that. And these all work really, really well. And what we've really been focusing on and utilizing as well here in Cambodia is air. Okay, so sampling air, and that's really what I'm going to talk about today. So we've been doing a bunch of validation and verification studies in live bird markets where we're sampling air as well as birds at the same time and other environmental samples. So here you see an air sampler above some birds. Here you see one next to some slaughter points. And these are working pretty well. We are able to detect avian influenza in air samples in a gradiated manner. Basically, so we can see it in the birds, and we also see it in the slaughter areas as well as storage areas, and even in food prep areas that are actually physically separated from these areas as well. Places that we didn't know there was avian influenza before. We're also detecting the same subtypes. So if we look in chickens versus air, we can detect all the ones that we're concerned about, H5, H7, H9, as well as other subtypes. We also can use different types of air samplers. So when we use these BASH air samplers that were really meant for construction initially, if we just have workers wear these for 30 minutes a day during peak AIV season here, there's 100% chance of us actually isolating a live H9 or H5 virus from those samplers within just 30 minutes of wearing that sampler. So it really helps us assess the risk of these markets overall. We can even do this handheld now. So using new samplers, we can actually get closer to the subjects that we want to look at. So here you see sampling from birds, but also from things like defeathering machines. These are able to pick up avian influenza viruses. And we can utilize that in a number of different settings. So not just in live bird markets, but also in places like swine slaughterhouses. So here you see us using big air samplers as well as handheld ones. We can use it in wild animals. So this is in captive wild civets, where we're comparing swabs and air samples at the same time. And we can use this technology at high-risk interfaces. So in things like bats, and other places where we're actually looking, to prevent having to handle the animals or to reduce biosafety risks or get a broader information about what's going on. So here you see us using the large samplers and the handheld samplers when we're out sampling bats. We can even do this remotely now because of the size of these samplers. We can put them on things like drones. So here you see an air sampler actually strapped to an aerial drone that we're testing out now, and what I call terrestrial drones. So basically remote controlled cars that we have put air samplers in that we can drive into farms or other places where we don't want to disturb the animals or get broader views of what's going on. We can also use these things not only for domestic animal sampling, but also for wild animal sampling. We've successfully used our drones to identify dead birds within colonies in remote areas. So here, that's what you see on the left, and then using the air sampler to sample carcasses from those birds. But we also use the drones to identify places of high risk. So we can actually look for duck farms or other things where we're looking for free-ranging duck flocks or other areas that might have high poultry wild bird interaction. So we're also, in addition to sampling and getting more information, we also want to improve testing. Improving diagnostics obviously can do a lot for us. So we can increase sensitivity and specificity, we can increase the speed and versatility of our diagnostics, and we can also use these to discover new pathogens. There's a number of ways to do this. I don't have time to talk about all of them. Obviously, multiplex testing is a very, very big subject right now. It will help you to test many pathogens within one sample, but also many subtypes of avian influenza. We've done this with a number of different kits. Here's one just from Indical. It does pick up all the lineages that we're concerned about here in Cambodia. But we're also concerned about human infection. So we've done studies where we're looking at commercial human assays and making sure that they pick up avian influenza viruses. And here you can see that we do pick up these avian influenza virus samples with these commercial multiplex kits as well, which means they're also very useful for what we're doing. We also have pen-side solutions, so things like portable PCR, as well as things like RDTs, et cetera, et cetera. I'm not going to touch on this too much today, but these are options to bring the lab to the field and get information much more quickly. And here you see one of my staff using a field PCR machine in a bat cave in Cambodia. There's also things like advanced sequencing. Our sequencers these days can fit in our pocket. We can take them anywhere and do anything with them. We have recently utilized a rapid AIV surveillance using integrated indexing in our primers and field-forward bioinformatics. These allow us to cut a lot of time out of our sample preparation with tailed primed PCR indexing. Our bioinformatics are also laptop deployable, and they're field forward and they're real time. So here you see samples actually being base called and read in real time, showing us what HA, NA, PB1, PB2, everything that is actually in the sample in real time as it comes off the machine. This has been critical for us not only to understand circulation of H5 viruses here in Cambodia. So here you see that we're having mixed infections with 2344 and 2321C, but also to respond to human infections over the course of the pandemic. We had 2 H9N2 infections, which are closely related to chickens in 2021 and 2022, respectively. And then, of course, you probably all heard about the H5N1 cases that occurred this year. We were able to go from sample to sequence in less than 24 hours and release those to the public within 72, which is massively important for response. We also found out that these were 2321C viruses, which obviously we've been studying 2321C for a long time, which means we understand how they are transmitted and things like that. And there's no evidence of human-to-human transmission of these viruses at the current time. So what do we hope to do with these novel techniques? The ability to use environmental samples for in-field diagnostics and discovery really increases our surveillance capacity, but it also will help you understand new or emerging pathogens. So they increase speed, they increase comprehensiveness of what you're testing, they increase biosafety, so you're not always handling live samples of potentially risky viruses, and also protect people that are out doing sampling. They protect the animals that we're actually working with. We're not sticking swab in them, we're not bleeding them, we're not holding them. And of course, if you use them correctly, they reduce cost. So everyone always talks about the cost of active sampling. If we use these environmental samples as a proxy for individual birds, we can actually reduce our cost of sampling overall. So in the future, what we want to do, obviously, is continue surveillance. We need to maintain longitudinal active surveillance in a lot of places and to continue and improve our testing and sequencing pipelines. To do more studies and we can use these to do more studies at the wild, domestic, and environmental interfaces. We can incorporate and test more novel technologies for early warning. We also need to incorporate things like socioeconomics, how these actually impact the viral diversity and things like that in key places. And then, of course, we need to use these for our new strategies. So we've talked a lot about stamping out versus vaccination, how we're actually going to change our surveillance based on these new practices. Can these new surveillance strategies help us to look at these things? And then, of course, surveillance for other diseases. Can we incorporate things like metagenomics and other multi-pathogen testing to look for other pathogens that we may be interested in to reduce costs even more? And with that, I will stop. I only had 10 minutes. So thank you to everyone that works with us on these projects. My email is here in case anyone wants to talk about these things. And thank you very much for having me here to share today.
Thank you, Eric, for comprehensive presentation, how high-tech, novel technique can be used for surveillance of avian influenza, particularly in environment sector, because everybody talking One Health means human, animal, plant, environment interface. But this is the novel technique, how to detect avian influenza viruses in air as well as contaminated environment, particularly live bird market. And you have also highlighted that this technique, new techniques can be used under field condition although active surveillance is expensive, but it is important for early detection and early warning of avian influenza at the country level. So now I would like to request Dr. Rohini Jais, Head of Zoonotic Sector, Ministry of Health, to provide us information on zoonotic influenza surveillance related to good practices and surveillance in humans. So she's working for Disease Control Division, Ministry of Health, Malaysia.
Thank you, Dr. Kongkang. May I have the slide, please? So I will share with you the Malaysian experience in zoonotic influenza surveillance related to good practice surveillance in humans. Next slide, please. Okay. Human influenza surveillance in Malaysia was started somewhere in September 2003 with establishment of sentinel sites for regular specimen collection from outpatients. The lab capacity was also built up at that time, besides 2 existing national influenza centers, which was developed earlier on, but it was very much dependent on the inpatient samples. So when the avian influenza outbreak occurred in the Western Pacific region in 2004, the capacity, especially the lab capacity, was already in place, because it's already well established by then. The influenza surveillance system was then reviewed in 2016, taking into consideration the outcome of the surveillance evaluation and our experience in handling pandemic flu 2009 and other respiratory pathogens such as SARS in 2003 and MERS-CoV-2 since 2012. So the objective of the influenza surveillance as listed, and I guess this does not differ much between countries. Next, please. So influenza surveillance consists of 2 major components, which are the disease-based surveillance and laboratory-based surveillance. For disease-based surveillance, it is done through surveillance of ILI in the sentinels clinics and admission of severe acute respiratory infection or SARI in the sentinel hospitals. Meanwhile, for the laboratory-based surveillance, clinical samples from the communities are sent to the National Influenza Laboratories, or NIL in short, which involve 6 regional public health labs. Meanwhile, samples from hospitals are then sent to national influenza centers. We have 2 national influenza centers, the IMR, which cater all the government facilities, and virology lab of University Malaya Medical Center, which only cater their inpatients. So this NIC will collect and coordinate the sending of samples of positive isolate of flu A as well as B isolates together with untypable flu A to the regional reference influenza lab. For Malaysia, our RRIL lab is the Victorian Infectious Disease Reference Lab in Melbourne, Australia, and the information from these positive samples is then shared with the Global Initiative on Sharing All Influenza Data, or GSID. Next slide, please. So as avian influenza continues to be a global threat, in 2016, it was decided that AI should be mandatory notifiable disease under the Prevention and Control of Communicable Disease Act 1988. It was then gazetted, and any medical practitioners, whether practicing in clinics or hospitals or lab, who know the existence of AI cases should notify the nearest health office for further management, and fail to do so is liable to compound. Next slide, please. So this diagram shows the EI surveillance in Malaysia consists of the case-based surveillance, which comes from the lab, as well as the mandatory notifiable disease system, and also event-based surveillance, including the outbreak notification and rumor surveillance. And if you look here, the source of information is not only from the MOH health facilities and laboratories, but also from the animal health sector, the community, especially farmers and villagers, as well as the local and international media. We are looking at the rumors. As we know that sometimes media got the news first before the government agencies got about it. Their system worked better, I guess. So next slide, please. Next slide, sorry, this the animation impact. Next, please. Yes. Okay. This slide shows the testing algorithm for samples from ILI and SARI cases. All the cases are tested for flu virus and SARS-CoV-2 following the COVID outbreak 2000. And all positive flu isolate are sent to VIDRL for the testing and upload in the GSAID. Next, please. So, okay. This graph just shows the positivity rate of SARS-CoV-2 and influenza in the community from 2021 until epic week 17 this year. Both SARS-CoV-2 and influenza shows nearly a mirror effect. If the SARS-CoV-2 positivity rate increase, the flu positivity rate decrease and vice versa. So as if only one virus is dominant at one time. So next slide, please. However, for SARI surveillance, previous slide, or the next slide. Next. Next. Okay. So this as positive rate for the SARI sentinel samples, it shows that high positive rate for flu virus as compared to SARS-CoV-2 among severe acute respiratory infectious disease cases, except during the spread of Omicron strain in late 2021 until early 2022. But then since 2022 onwards, majority of SARI cases were positive for flu virus. And we know that Omicron has high infectivity rate, but then the severity of cases is not as bad as Delta. So the number of SARI caused by Omicron was not that high. Okay, next slide, please. Okay. As avian influenza is a zoonotic pathogen, collaboration with the animal health sector is vital. Ever since the Nipah outbreak occurs in Malaysia in 1997, the Department of Veterinary Services, the DVS and MOH have a very strong collaboration. We have joint surveillance since 2000. Initially, we have 18 pathogens, whereby HPAI is one of the pathogens under surveillance, and also influenza for human, swine, and equine. And next slide, next, please. And in 2011, the pathogens was reviewed and prioritized to 14 pathogens. And you can see here that influenza virus is considered as priority 1. Taking into consideration the risk of emerging and re-emerging in Malaysia, as well as based on previous incidents in the country. We had HPAI occurred in the country in 2004. Next, please. Okay. This diagram shows the data sharing between the DVS and MOH at various levels. The formal communication is between the headquarters, as all information received from the states and district need to be verified before it can be shared between the two agencies. However, at the field levels, meaning the state and the district level, both parties have started communicating and planning their response. Next, please. Okay, this diagram has animation effect. So first, it shows the joint response between DVS and MOH in handling zoonosis, including avian influenza. For non-zoonotic event, the DVS will respond accordingly without involvement of MOH. Enter, please. And yeah, so they did not involve the MOH enterprise. However, once it is a zoonotic event, the MOH will be alerted. Enter please. The MOH HQ then will notify the event to the district and health district office. Then the district health office then activate the rapid assessment team or RAT to verify the event. Usually the RAT also the rapid response team with additional manpower. And then both, enter please, both the MOH RAT team and DVS rapid action team work together in a joint investigation. Enter please. Yeah. So in joint investigation, they interview the owner or the farmers of the affected poultry and the workers together, the DVS and also the MOH. They do it in a clean area to prevent cross-contamination and ensuring demarcation where the sampling for human and animal take place, and also the contamination and disinfection, the role and function of each agency at the place of incidents. So this joint response is very important in order to prevent farmers smuggle sick poultry out of the farm and spread the virus, as well as to avoid repetitive questions need to be answered by the farmers or the owners. This is a complaint that we receive from the farmers actually. Okay, next slide. Then both the RRT in DVS and also MOH write the report, and the report shared with each agencies. This joint investigation actually elaborated in the manual developed by both human and animal sectors. Next, please. So my last slide, in conclusion, for zoonotic influenza surveillance in human to work better, it should maximize the existing respiratory infection surveillance system, both at health facilities level as well as in the community, because we do not want to reinvent the wheel and do not want to overburden our staff whom already have so many programs to run. And two, for an effective zoonotic influenza surveillance and response in human, the system should be integrated with the surveillance and response in animal health sector, and collaborating and coordinating the activities in both sectors actually capitalize on the One Health approach. That's all. Thank you for your attention.
Yeah, thank you, Malaysia, for sharing how ILI SARI surveillance is done using community-based and hospital-based settings. And you also highlighted how prioritization of important pathogen, it may change from time to time. And you also highlighted how better human health, animal health sector can work together for influenza surveillance. And you also enlighten us that joint outbreak investigation response, that is the way to go, and information sharing between two sectors is very, very important. Thank you for all those information. And now I would like to request Dr. Sukant Chowdhury, who is working for International Center for Diarrheal Disease Research, ICDDRB, in Bangladesh. And he has extensive experience on surveillance of avian influenza in backyard farming, as well as livestock market. Yeah, Dr. Sukant Chowdhury, floor is yours.
Thank you, Gongal, for this nice introduction. So can you share my slides?
So,
Okay,
Sukanta, you have to share yourself.
Yeah, okay. I need a couple of minutes. So Can you
And-
see my slides?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, thank you so much. So now today I will talk about our avian influenza surveillance that currently we are doing. So ICDRB has been conducting this avian influenza surveillance since 2007, and it is still ongoing with the funding support from US CDC and in collaboration with Department of Livestock Services, IEDC, that is the Department of Health, and also Department of Wildlife. We are conducting this surveillance. And the main objective of this surveillance is to provide information and is to support government to control avian influenza viruses in Bangladesh. So next slide, please. Okay, I have the control. Thank you. So you can see here, Bangladesh is a huge country with that is the highest density of human population as well as the animal population, and there are very extensive poultry industry, mostly commercial chickens, but there are millions of backyard farm also existing. So Bangladesh reported first H5N1 outbreak in poultry in 2007, and till today more than 560 outbreak reported, and 8 human cases for H5N1 and 3 for H9N2 also reported from this country. And the poultry industry is very growing rapidly, and you can see there is a huge interaction with this poultry and also the human. People actually live very close to this poultry, mostly in the backyard setting, but in farm and that is the poultry market, it's also the interaction is heavy. So in the market, there are a huge number of visitors visiting, that is the shops, and there are a large number of poultry workers engaging by slaughtering and processing chickens, ducks, and other backyard poultry. So there is also a poultry wild bird interface in this country. So in every winter season, there is thousands of millions of migratory birds visit Bangladesh. So there is a chance of spillover or spreading new viruses from one continent to other continent. So we are in hot spot for particularly for these avian influenza viruses. So that's why we need a surveillance. We need a robust surveillance to identify circulatory strain, to detect any epidemic, to determine trend of avian influenza viruses, to understand the transmission dynamics, and also, of course, to detect any novel subtypes that may be important for public health. And we need this surveillance for local and global preparedness and control. And we are not only contributing in country, we are also contributing globally. So we shared our genetic data from this surveillance to the WHO through CDC for vaccine candidate preparation, vaccine candidate selection. So now ICDRB actually has this only surveillance. They are detecting avian influenza viruses in poultry. So we already shared about this issue. So far, this surveillance detected many subtypes. So I will not go for detail. So, but the common subtypes are H5N1 and H9N2, H5N6 we detected. And so far we detected 6 clades of H5N1 viruses. And according to the latest report, the predominant clade is 3.2.1a. And we frequently detect both H5N1 and H9N2. And in 2017, we reported for the first time H5N6 in this country. So this is actually the vaccine candidate viruses that's selected by WHO. So for the first 2 viruses selected from the surveillance platform. So it's contributing lots in the global health security purposes. So, and one of the samples that is the H9 also selected for future vaccine candidate preparation by WHO. So the main objective of this surveillance is to identify avian influenza viruses in domestic poultry, including both commercial chicken, backyard chicken, domestic waterfowl, and to identify any poultry die-off. And we also do some passive surveillance and to identify any unusual poultry die-off, particularly at the community setting. Recently, we have started, there is a wild bird sampling also from the last year. So we expanded this surveillance in the wild bird also. So currently we are doing this surveillance. This is a live bird market-based surveillance because it's cost effective. That's why we are doing this surveillance in live bird. So we are currently vigilant in 10 live bird markets. We are collecting samples from domestic waterfowl, commercial chicken, backyard chicken, and also the environment of live bird markets. So Eric already shared many issues regarding the environment survey. So we are not collecting air sample, but we cover other samples like the environmental surveys and the poultry waste, hand waste, like this. So we, in each month, we collect sample from that is a 135 specimen, 60 waterfowl, 35 commercial chickens, 30 backyard chicken, and 10 environmental pool sample. This is the pool sample we are using. So, and initially all of the samples tested at ICDW-1 health laboratory. And finally, we also ship avian influenza positive samples to US CDC for further characterization and further sharing with WHO. So we shared our regular report, monthly report to Department of Livestock Services and Department of Health, that is the IDCR. So the overall findings from the beginning 2007 and I think it's 2022. So the overall 6% of this sample tested positive for avian influenza viruses, and 3% of this sample tested positive for H5, and 6 days so far detected. So in the domestic waterfowl, you can see the circulation is relatively more. So the positivity is 9%, and the H5 positivity is that is the 5%. And we detect very few, particularly for H9 is the less than 1%. But in backyard chicken, you can see here the detect prevalence is not huge as like domestic waterfowl. It's 3%, and the H5 positivity rate is also 2%, and we also detecting H9 less than 1%. So I did not include any information for commercial chicken, but I would like to mention that we detected more H9 in commercial chicken rather than that is a H5 and other subtypes. And environment, you can see here the environment is heavily contaminated. So it represents 35% of this environmental sample tested positive for avian influenza. And out of these samples, 11% positive for H5 and 11% positive for H9. So you can see there is a pattern of avian influenza virus circulation. So in the waterfowl, domestic, these are all domestic waterfowl. So waterfowl means dark and haze. So you can see the red bar indicate the H5 detection. So we detect H5 viruses in almost in every years. So there is a continuous circulation of this avian influenza viruses in waterfowl. And we also, you can see here in the backyard chicken. So this is not like as waterfowl, but we sporadically detect there is the H5 viruses in the backyard chicken. It's also year-round circulation, but not too much consistent or more vigorous than that is a waterfowl. So you can see here the environmental sample, what happened in the environment. So in every month we detected huge number of samples tested positive for environment. So in every month we detecting avian influenza viruses. So for environmental sample is useful because and that is the individual poultry sample is costly, and also you will get less likely positive samples in the individual because we are doing this a random setting, so it depends. But environment provide you a better picture. So it's a cost effective, but it's provide a better picture of situation of these avian influenza viruses. So now we are collecting only the surface samples like the flood, that is poultry cages, slaughtering surfaces, poultry waste. We collect all of these samples and make it in pool for a market in each month. So far we identified many subtypes, and you can see the clade, the major clades is so very recently we also detected 2.3.4.4 clades. So we published several articles on this issue. So we did some epidemiological analysis, and we saw the prevalence of H5 viruses was less than 3% during 2007 to 2009, but 6 to 9% in 2011 to 2012, and less than 3% in 2013 to 2016. So in the mid period, it increased, then again decreased. And waterfowl were more likely to be positive for S5 subtypes than other species like chickens. And sample collected during the colder month were more likely to be positive than warmer month. But we detect in every month, but mostly detect in colder month. So I can conclude this: the highly pathogenic avian influenza viruses continue to circulate in backyard poultry, and not only backyard, in all domestic poultry like chicken, duck, geese, even also in wild bird. In the last year, we detected 2 birds out of 85 wild birds tested positive for S5, and we also detected 5 to 6 samples for unsusceptible. So this we are waiting for further result. So it is clear that this is a year-round circulation, and this surveillance is very crucial for not only for human health, it also for animal health, that actually provide more useful information to the government to respond to the any epidemics. And of course, in the global health security aspect, this data provide a very useful information to the WHO for future pre-pandemic vaccine viruses preparation. And this surveillance is useful that can provide sentinel detection of novel influenza viruses like S5 and 6. So we have not, we did not detect any S7 and 9 yet. So thank you all.
Thank you, Sukant, for comprehensive presentation about influenza surveillance, avian influenza surveillance in backyard poultry in Bangladesh. And surveillance is critical not only for early detection, early warning and response, but it is very, very important to feed influenza surveillance data to global influenza surveillance and response system, GIS-RS. That is very, very important to develop candidate vaccine virus, vaccine virus, CVV, and WHO provide, detect, try to identify candidate vaccine virus for influenza vaccine that is provided to industry for development of vaccine. And before closing, I would just like to highlight that media often uses swine flu and bird flu. We have to understand that if it is transmitted from poultry or pigs, it is known as bird flu or swine flu. But in media, we find that influenza A H1N1 pandemic 2009, that is also reported as swine flu, which is technically incorrect because there is a sustained human-human transmission, and that is subtype has been incorporated in a seasonal influenza vaccine, either it's trivalent or tetravalent. Thank you very much for sharing country experience from Republic of Korea, Cambodia, Malaysia, and Bangladesh. And we know how we can use different technology for active surveillance of avian influenza in environment, air and contaminated environment. That is very, very important. And now I would like to hand over to Dr. Lisa Thompson from World Organization of Animal Health for session 5. It is country experience, good practices in disease and outbreak management. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Dr. Gongal, and welcome to session 5. So we're going to have some more country experiences shared, but now we're really going to focus on good practices and sharing those experiences, what to do if we have got HPAI or how to manage outbreaks. First of all, we have a couple of presentations from Hong Kong, SAR. We'll start with Dr. Ivan Chong, who is the veterinary officer in the veterinary public health section of the Centre for Food Safety in Hong Kong. And he's responsible for import inspection measures and will talk to us today about avian influenza as a zoonosis in wet markets. So if I could just pass over to Dr. Chong, please.
Can I share my screen here?
I think we can do that. Yes, we'll just let you do that now.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, can everyone see it?
It's just come up now. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So thank you for Dr. Lisa Thompson for the introduction. We will now share Hong Kong's experience in managing avian influenza in the wet market. And I will first present to you the development of our overall strategy in tackling AI. And then my colleagues, Barry, will present to you more specifically about the work in the wet market. So without further ado, let's talk about Hong Kong experience. So in 1997, the first case of H5N1 infection in human was found in Hong Kong. There was an outbreak of H5N1 causing serious disease in both men and poultry. 18 people were infected and 6 of them died. So that led us to the first mass culling of poultry in Hong Kong. More than 1.5 million live poultry were culled in order to control the disease. So after the mass culling, we noted another problem. Back in 1997, both poultry and waterfowls were allowed to kept in the same wet market. And we knew we had to separate the two, as waterfowls, we know they are reservoir for the avian influenza virus. So how do we solve this problem? Therefore, new legislation were introduced to ban waterfowls in wet market. So only long waterfowls poultry were allowed to remain in the wet market. The new legislation also require waterfowls to have separate import landing points and a separate wholesale market. Another problem we face is that we didn't have a robust AI surveillance system at that time. We needed to establish a surveillance system to detect possible future outbreak. Therefore, in 1998, we have enhanced our AI surveillance and monitoring system to cover not only the local farm, but also the wholesale market, the retail market, the pet bird shops, and even places such as nature reserve and wetland parks, and the bird parks, etc. Also, we introduced the round-the-clock sick and dead wild birds collection services. What that means is that if you see a dead bird on the street, you can just simply call the hotline and someone will come and pick up the birds and send it to the lab for testing. And then there were the imported poultry. Before the outbreak, the imported poultry were not tested for AI at all prior to their entrance to Hong Kong. So a testing system was needed before import of the poultry could be resumed. So a testing program at the border was then introduced. Swab samples were collected from each consignment of imported chicken for PCR tests. Blood samples were also collected for serology tests. And the poultries are whole at the wholesale market before the testing results are released. So only if the results come back negative, the poultry can be released. And then we have another problem is that the wholesale market was another area that we looked at after the outbreak. Because before the outbreak, the cages in the wholesale market were not really properly washed or disinfected before they were sent to the local farms for chicken collection. And also there was no hold and test arrangement in the wholesale market before the outbreak. So a series of changes were introduced to the wholesale market. Washing and disinfection machine was installed to properly wash the cages to make sure they are clean and disinfected properly and free of virus before they are brought to the chicken farm. Also, trucks need to be cleaned and disinfected before they can leave the wholesale market for the farm. And we have introduced the rule that one truck from one local farm can only enter the wholesale market once a day. This is to reduce the chances of cross-contamination. And also imported poultry cannot be released until samples collected at the border come back negative, like I said before. And also all poultry from the local farm must be tested negative at the farm before they can enter the wholesale market. And the wholesale market itself, of course, need to be cleaned and disinfected every day after business. That's the wholesale market. And next, we look at the farm biosecurity issues, and we find that they were generally very poor, the biosecurity of the farm. To be honest, there were very few biosecurity measures against AI, and they were not up to the standard. So what we do is we enhance the requirements of the local farm biosecurity through license conditions. So now the bird-proof nets, disinfection pool are now required, together with control on movements of birds and humans and equipment, etc. The government would also conduct farm visits and bird counts and sampling, and sentinel birds are used. But after all this hard work we have done, we still had more HPAI, the high-path AI outbreaks in local farm. And surveillance results indicate that the AI viral dose was still quite high in the environment. So in 2003, we have introduced the compulsory AI vaccination in poultry against H5 subtype. So antibody titers in the chicken were checked and make sure they reach a particular standard before they are allowed to transport to the wholesale market. The government also rolled out a voluntary surrender scheme and buyout plan in an attempt to reduce the number of local chicken farms in the territory. This has significantly reduced the number of local poultry farms and the number of poultry that could be legally kept in the territory. And then there were also the issue of backyard poultry. The health of the AI and the AI status of these birds cannot be verified, and some of them are located quite close to the commercial farms. So in 2006, a new legislation was introduced to ban backyard poultry in Hong Kong. So the government officers would conduct inspection to make sure no backyard poultry were kept in the territory. But HPAI outbreak in farm continued. The last one is in 2008. And we think part of the reason is that the live poultry could still be kept in the wet market for a long time, which could lead to accumulation of virus in the wet market. So overnight keeping of live poultry in wet market was prohibited in 2008. And my colleague Barry will tell you more about this later. So all in all, these are all the AI control measures that we have developed in Hong Kong in response to our local situation. I will now pass the time to Barry to talk about Chief Health Inspector. He's a Chief Health Inspector from the Food and Environmental Department. He will tell you more about AI control in wet market. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Dr. Chong, for that summary of your experiences in Hong Kong. As you said, we're going to have another short presentation from Mr. Kwok, Mr. Low. So Mr. Kwok Lab Hay currently serves as the Chief Health Inspector, as you say, in Wang Chai District, overseeing the district's operations of market management and hawker control. And also we have input from Mr. Lo Siu-ki, who is the Senior Health Inspector from 2018. Mr. Lo served as the Departmental Prosecutor for the New Territories region and then took up office for market management in Yao Tsim district in 2021. So I'll pass over to Mr. Kwok and Mr. Lo for the next part of your presentation. Thank you.
Nobody really realized. Yeah, they should be highlighting. Should be okay.
Hi.
Hello.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. You're sharing the slides from your screen, yes?
Yeah, thank you. Right here. Screen. Yeah. Okay. So this is Barry from the Food and Environmental Hygiene Department, and COK is with us to have a closer look to the specific measures for AI in live poultry retail outlets in Hong Kong. Currently, freshly slaughtered chickens are produced from 128 retail outlets, which include 43 fresh provision shops, which hold our license. They can usually be found on streets. And we also have 85 live poultry stores in markets, which are leased by our department. And the tenants are required to sign tenancy agreements with us to operate the stores. Freshly slaughtered poultry are sold here to individual customers and restaurants for consumption. Since the first human case of H5N1 infection here in 1997, numerous safeguarding measures have been imposed to prevent its outbreak. They can be classified as preventive, surveillance, and remedial in nature. Regarding preventive measures, first of all, we have the segregation policy, which is mentioned by Dr. Chong. Long time ago, we had different kinds of poultry kept closely in the same cage, which was very risky. Starting from 1998, it has been required by law that no live water birds, such as geese and ducks, should be sold in the outlets. Also, no live quails should be sold with other live poultry at the same premises. Second, common areas in markets are cleaned 3 times per day, and an enhanced cleansing will be conducted at the end of the day when poultry stores are also disinfected. We require that all walls, floors, crates, cages, utensils, equipment, and etc. to be completely washed and disinfected. Then we are talking about the overnight stocking and expand. The retail outlets usually open between 6 a.m. and 8 p.m. Live poultry is allowed to be kept between 8 p.m. to 5 a.m. the next day. That is, all poultry must be slaughtered at 8 p.m. Disinfection is carried out at night. Breach of the overnight stocking ban is an offense and will be subject to immediate termination of license or tenancy agreement. Note that the government will not issue such FPS license for the live poultry, nor granting new tenancies for live poultry stores in public markets. So the retailers can't make a living if they have the license or tenancy agreement canceled, and therefore the termination has actually a deterrent effect. Further, slaughtering should only be conducted in the slaughter, scalding, or dressing room. Poultry carcass and offal should be handled separately, and the retailers are required to wear protective gears. And the poultry should be obtained from the wholesale market or an approved source. The picture shown here is the only wholesale poultry market in Hong Kong. In the previous slide, this clauses or condition is actually included in our food hygiene code, which provide guidelines on the handling of live poultry, hygiene, slaughtering process, and display of their dressed poultry, which should be practiced by the operators. Long time ago, customer made direct contacts with the live poultry. Nowadays, we require that cages facing the passageway should be segregated by a plastic panel to minimize the transmission risk. We also engage new design for poultry store in our markets. A store is divided into 3 sections, which customer place their order in the live poultry section, where there's a glass panel with intercom to completely isolate the customers. After the poultry is slaughtered in the slaughtering room, the customer is allowed to take the poultry away from the retail area. To reduce the virus transmission risk in markets, in 2021, one-off subsidy is provided to eligible tenants of our market stores at 5,000 Hong Kong dollars for use to meet the initial setup costs and service fees for provision of contactless payment means. As shown here, the customer is scanning a QR code to conduct e-pay. As regards surveillance, we have been deploying our health inspectors and some other officers to inspect the public market stores and FPS selling live poultry every day and once a week, respectively. Also, our routine surveillance program has been in place to collect samples from poultry feeders, drinking water, defeathering machine, and chopping board for detection of influenza A virus in the outlets. The operators are required to keep records showing the supply of live poultry for at least 60 days. Besides, when the sum of dead poultry in the previous 24 hours exceed 5% of the total number of the poultry, these cases should be reported immediately to us, which we will refer these cases to the laboratory for investigation. Regarding the remedial measures, if positive H5 or H7 samples are detected, culling of all live poultry in the concerned outlets in the vicinity and its closure for 21 days may be required to prevent the spread of AI and human infection. After the population, disinfection should be done to the satisfactions of the FHD before resumption of its operation. We have other measures also, such as the providing the free seasonal influenza vaccine. It is given to workers in the live poultry trade. And we also provide training, which is the poultry culling operation in preparation for outbreak, which is offered to our officers as part of the contingency plan. And this is the end of our presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Hong Kong. Lots of very salient points there outlining that it's unfortunately not a simple fix to address avian influenza control, but many different aspects need to be addressed. Thank you so much. We have another presentation now in this session from Vietnam. So we have Dr. Nguyen Thi Diep, who is a veterinarian, virologist and epidemiologist. Since January 2015, she has been working in the Division of Drug and Vaccine Management and Division of Epidemiology at the Department of Animal Health in Vietnam. Can I pass over now to Dr. Diep, please?
Yes. Hello, everyone. Yeah.
Hello, Dr. Diep. Welcome.
Thank you very much for inviting me to join this important meeting.
I think, are you sharing slides from your side?
Oh, I thought that, sorry for this, not a well preparation, but I thought that we don't have a presentation, but just like ask and question and then give answers. Sorry for that. Hopefully, yeah. It's not a well instruction. Sorry for that. Yeah.
That's fine. If you want to just go ahead with your presentation, then that's fine. Thank you.
Actually, I haven't prepared the presentation. I thought it's the panelists that to ask questions and then answer the questions about the experiences or any questions that related to HPAI. Yeah. So, but anyway, I can say something about this presentation. Is that okay?
Yes, if you could give us some updates, maybe some background of the situation in Vietnam, and maybe explain some of the approaches that you've used in Vietnam to manage avian influenza. Thank you.
Yes, and here I would love to talk with you, to share with you about the information about the situation in the current situation of HPAI in Vietnam. Currently, we have only the virus of H5N1 circulating in the country, and for this year, we detected only 7 outbreaks in 5 provinces, and with a total of number of dead birds is about almost 10,000. And to compare with the past year, the same period from the past year, and for the number of outbreaks and also for the number of dead birds or infected birds, that's all decreased for over 82%. And you know that, to compare this previous year, that's also decreased a lot. So what does it mean here? I think that a number of key elements Vietnam apply for that can contribute to the successful the control and prevention of the disease. And today I would love to share with you some of that, and also to make some of changes for the future activities to have a better control and prevention of this disease. So the first thing, we do think that for this important key element that we should have on the legal basis for AI control and AI outbreak investigation that should be available for all of the relevant parties or individuals. So that can provide for the understanding for both sides, and then responsible for the implementation of this disease. And the second thing, that is we should have a national plan for control and prevention of HPAI and leopard AI, and that should be prepared and revised regularly using the One Health approaches. That the national plan should address all the risks of AI introduction and spread and the occurrence of AI at different levels, and the plan that should also be details by the details activities and specific assignment to all the relevant agencies and individuals or the private sectors and resources to implement this. Such activities should be addressed as well and regularly updated to fit the current situation. And the third thing that's really important is the coordination of the public and the animal health sector to join and carry out. The first thing is joint risk assessment, and the second thing is to carry out the active surveillance to ensure timely detection, early warning, and effective response, and also to carry out any AI suspect outbreak or outbreak investigation. That's to identify source of infection and the relevant risk factor, and provide approaches, control measures. And the third thing, this is also really important, that we should have a good laboratory system that can provide you active surveillance and updated reagent framework. If the virus changes, then we have to update it. How we update it? That's we have to follow the reference from provided by flu or WHO or by US CDC or whatever. But inside the country, we also have that kind of system to update ourselves, because the virus is not the same for every country, right? So that's we have to update it, and also we have to take the sample and ask for the subtype, and then continue doing for the sequencing work and analyze on time, and then we can be able to update the reagent if any changes, and also to update the vaccine candidate for potential risks, and that can contribute not only for our country to use for animal, but also contribute to public health. That we normally do for about almost 20 years. So the viruses from Vietnam often share 2 or 3 shipments per year to US CDC or to Hokkaido reference laboratory, and that for sequencing, and then for the vaccine candidate selection, and also for further analysis, antigenic cartography, and so on. And back to the country, once we have that kind of important information, then we every year we renew the we carry out the vaccine efficacy experiment in poultry with the current viruses circulating, and also with the poultry vaccine that's circulating in the country. And if that meets vaccine matching with the virus, few viruses, then that should be okay. But if not, then we will find a way to import or to produce locally the vaccines that can have that matching for this use, and then we provide official document from our Department of Animal Health, and that can recommend to all the private sector or the poultry owner to use efficient vaccine. And the other thing that we think is also important is for the risk communication should be developed and ready for all level, especially for good farming and biosecurity practice, vaccination, and daily observation. So all of this can make a better control of the disease. And I think it's number 6. Is to establish a disease-free zone or compartment for industrial production chain. So that's not only for exporting poultry or poultry product, but also that's to provide a good quality for our internal consumption, for the country consumption. And the last but not least is that at the national level, coordination for implementation of the national action plan play a very important role and facilitate engagement of all the political and technical agencies, and also the private sector. That's really important to ensure that they all have the same understanding the risk of AI and allocation of resources to implement the National Action Plan FATP. And for the part, do I have time? Do I have 1 minute more?
Yes, sure. Continue. Thank you.
So I think for the future, that we should for the future activity for to control and for AI, HPAI preparedness, that we should have something to make some changes. So firstly, after listening to the Hong Kong presentation, I really love the way that they deal with the backdrops, and also ban the backdrops farm, and also household, and also for the wet market. So I think that's something we agree with, and that's for the future from Vietnam. That's to reform poultry sector to reduce more scale and household. Yeah. So that's for bachelor's time. So it's really important. And the second thing is about the labor market. So we should learn from what you have done, Dr. from Hong Kong. Yeah. And also keep continuing to work on the active surveillance. We know that it's a costly and ethnic problem for country as well. But we think that with the recommendation from Eric Castle, with the high technology for sampling and detecting the virus, then we hope that our active surveillance in Vietnam will be much easier and can have spend less money for that. And for using for virus sequences regularly, or some cases is for fast sequences that we have to do too. Like when we did from the last year when we detected the H5N1 clade 2344B, and that's the virus. The primary probe first time didn't work. That's the current that we have. But then we need to sequence and then we update it. Then we, the leading laboratory, national leading laboratory NCVD, they update the protocol and they share with all the best system laboratory in Vietnam. And then it worked well. We share with public health as well. And the other thing that's for antigenic characterization and selection of vaccine candidates, that should be continue and vaccine efficacy. Yeah. And of course, we anticipatively on small scale and also must vaccinate their poultry. That's for alternative measure. And it's pending more free zone for HPAI and develop roadmap for for a centralized slaughterhouse. Yeah, not only like a small slaughterhouse, but centralized slaughterhouse, and also to have better compensation policies. Yeah, and for biosecurity as well, we should have a good system to reinforce farm assets control system and reducing the number of visitors for the biosecurity measure. Yeah, so that's the end of my talk for today. If you have any questions, just please let me know. Thanks a lot for that.
Thank you so much, Dr. Jap. You managed to fit in a lot of information there. Thank you so much for sharing. It's really interesting to hear how Vietnam is following a national plan where you've got the One Health aspect. You're thinking about sequencing the viruses so that you can then plan on which is the best vaccine, that you have a system for early warning and outbreak investigation, and also thinking about the biosecurity that we heard from, again, for Hong Kong and their markets. So I think our time for this session is actually up. Thank you so much to the speakers for this session. I will now close session 5 and pass over to my colleague, Ms. Lika Wieser from WHO Western Pacific Regional Office, who is a technical officer for risk communications at the Country Health Emergency Preparedness and IHR in the WHO Health Emergencies Programme. Thank you so much, Lika. Over to you. Is Lika there? We can't hear her. I wonder if someone from WHO can follow up. Perhaps I can pass back to Dr. Gongal. or perhaps Nika,
Yeah.
is she there?
Thank you very much. I think there was connectivity problem. I do not know whether our colleague from Wipro is present right now, but I think we have Rose Marin from Wipro. I think she's co-host. And also Lika Wieser, also I could see she's online.
Hi, good morning, colleagues.
Yeah.
I really welcome everyone to the webinar, and we've come to the closing session where we'd like to share some key insights from the webinar. We really recognize that multi-sectoral coordination and collaboration is key to achieving timely actions to prevent, contain, and respond to zoonotic influenza outbreaks, and that these joint actions of all the partners here and all the stakeholders is very important for us moving forward. And with that, I would like to open the floor for FAO to share their recommendations and conclusions.
Thank you, Lik. It's Philip here from the regional office in Bangkok. So I think over the last two sessions and the last 2 days, it's been really become clear that avian influenza is still here, and not just in Southeast Asia, but now also present in Europe, Northern and Southern America. And we saw that, or people may have seen that WHO kind of ended the current coronavirus pandemic by not calling it a fake anymore, which maybe gives us the time now to prepare for the next pandemic, which we all know might well be an influenza pandemic. And therefore, I think the last 2 days really shown that if we want to be better prepared for such a pandemic, which hopefully will not come soon, that we really have to start looking at three main components from what we have seen from all our keynote speakers. And I think the first one is really surveillance. Is like we really cannot be better prepared if we don't continue to do our surveillance. And that means not just in humans to wait when it comes and picking it up in SARI or ILI, but really going to livestock and wildlife and getting ahead of the curve, going to the left and continue all this active surveillance with different potential novel approaches, as Eric has shown, to be more cost effective, to be faster, and to share this data quickly. Second component, I think, is as Hong Kong showed and as Diep just showed as well, is to keep improving our biosecurity measures to really reduce the risks at the animal-human interface, to make sure that we have very good biosecurity practices being installed, as you have seen with very good results in Hong Kong. And then the third one, which I think was touched upon and which is still under debate, of course, is vaccination, where some countries are now currently already vaccinating, other countries are debating about vaccination, and other countries still have hurdles or just going for classical culling methodologies. As Shantanu yesterday also said, like the cost of vaccination and post-vaccination monitoring might be more expensive than the vaccination as such. So, but definitely there has been, and I think also at the WOHA general session, there will be a debate on this. So I think we have the tools ready to be better prepared and to be better in controlling avian influenza. So it's now just a matter of seeing how we can do this as a quadripartite and with our member state in the most effective way. And that's where I will stop. Over.
Thank you so much.
Sorry.
Thank you, Dr. Klaes, for sharing that with us, and really salient points for recommendations on the way forward. Next, I'd like to ask UNEP to share their conclusions and recommendations.
Yeah, thank you very much. Coming from environment sector, I'd like to share some perspectives from environmental dimensions. So in this webinar, we have highlighted that there are close connections between the health of humans, animals, and our planet. And now today, we are facing the triple planetary crisis of climate change, nature and biodiversity loss, and pollution and waste. And that is really threatening our quality of life, livelihoods, health, and well-being. And really, these declines in nature and our environment have contributed significantly to the emergence and spread of zoonotic diseases. And so in this webinar, we have discussed some of the major environmental drivers of zoonotic influenza, including land use change and habitat loss, agricultural practices that place humans, poultry, and wildlife in close mutual proximity, and also illegal wildlife trade and consumption, and other drivers of biodiversity loss. So it's very clear that scaling up our efforts in protecting environment should be central to our efforts towards preventing the emergence and spread of zoonotic diseases in the future. And here I'd like to highlight some of the areas where we think we should scale up our future efforts. And firstly, we should focus on preventing the further degradation and land use change, including of those landscapes along wild bird migration routes. And we should also prioritize conservation and restoration, especially of wetlands, by capitalizing on existing flagship initiatives like the UN Decade on Ecosystem Restoration, and also strengthening the implementation of various multilateral environmental agreements. And here we talked about the Convention on Biological Diversity and its new global biodiversity framework. And we should also focus on reducing adverse agricultural practices and incentivize the shift towards more sustainable agricultural practices. And we should also focus on combating illegal wildlife trade. And here, strengthening the implementation of the Convention on International Trade in Endangered Species, CITES, is essential. And we should also ensure the active engagement of the environmental sector in One Health initiatives. And this could really contribute to building coordinated surveillance and early warning systems on zoonotic diseases and other emerging health threats through integrating environmental data. And lastly, I would also like to emphasize that the scaled up upstream environmental actions for preventing zoonotic influenza is essential, and this actually makes economic sense. So there is an estimate that shows that prevention costs, including the monitoring and prevention of disease spillover, range between 18 and $27 million per year. And when we consider the global economy contracted due to COVID-19, it's estimated that the annual cost of prevention is actually less than 1% of the cost of the COVID-19 pandemic. So let us really invest in protecting and restoring nature, which is really key to the effective prevention of zoonotic disease outbreaks in the future. And UNEP is really committed to support these efforts in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, UNEP, for speaking so passionately about this and really highlighting that prevention and response in part of your recommendations. With that, I would like to ask the WHO to come in with their final remarks.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much. I just want to use a few slides. So definitely, we agree with our colleague who has highlighted importance of surveillance at the human-animal environment interfaces. And this time we try to give new dimension of zoonotic influenza surveillance. It is not only human and poultry or pigs sample collection or migratory birds, but also environment like air and contaminated environment, particularly in live bird market settings. So there are a few conclusions from public health perspective. Close contact with the infected animal or contaminated environment is a risk factor for zoonotic influenza transmission to humans. I also highlighted that surveillance of swine influenza is very, very important that we have to keep in mind because pigs, they are recipient or they can there is replication of avian, swine, and human influenza viruses. So in the past, it was known as mixing vessel. And secondly, H1, H2, N3. It is also human influenza virus and swine influenza virus. And we just put V because if it is of swine origin. So H1N1V means pigs. From pigs we are getting. And if we say H1N1 simply, then it is seasonal influenza virus. And third, seasonal influenza virus, H1N1 or H1N2 does not prevent swine influenza in humans. So that is very, very important. And if there is no sustained human-to-human transmission, it is still we have bird flu or swine flu. Influenza A viruses have not acquired the ability of sustained transmission among humans, but this does not discard the potential risk. So surveillance is key for identification of influenza virus of potential pandemic. So that is very, very important. And I would like to stress that surveillance for zoonotic influenza. And that we all organization, quadripartite organization, we should try to work together. And tripartite group, FAO, WA, and WHO, we develop joint risk assessment. This is operational tool. And the country presentation also focus on joint outbreak investigation response. That's why it is important that joint risk assessment are key to ensure containment of international spread and consider pandemic risk. Last but not least, there is a need to increase diagnostic capacity, particularly whole genomic sequencing. It was highlighted by WA Collaborating Center, Reference Laboratory for Avian Influenza, and awareness for respiratory illness etiology. It is RSV as well as SARI, ILI, that we have to make sure that we have good surveillance system for respiratory infection. So that is very, very important. And what are the key recommendations? Definitely, we have to highlight here International Health Regulation 2005. All human infection caused by a new influenza subtype, particularly of animal origin, are required to be reported under the IHR 2005. So this message we want to relay because this is the mandatory requirement because all countries, they have signed IHR 2005. Second, global surveillance of zoonotic influenza is essential for identification of influenza virus of pandemic potential, selection of candidate vaccine virus, CVV, antiviral susceptibility, because we know oseltamivir and zanamivir, different antiviral substances are used, and there is a risk of antiviral resistance. So even in seasonal influenza, oseltamivir is used. That means it may not work for future pandemics. So that's why antiviral susceptibility is very important, and also prevention of future potential pandemics. Third, multi-sector collaboration at the country level using One Health approach is crucial for early detection, early warning, and containment of zoonotic influenza viruses emerging at the human-animal interface. Last but not least, WHO continue to stress the importance of global monitoring of variant influenza viruses, particularly live market, and recommends to all member states to strengthen routine surveillance activities, which may be on hold during COVID-19 pandemic. And it is very, very important to save, to prevent future pandemics. And I agree with other colleagues that if there is human case, that means it is failure. So we have to invest more on surveillance of animal as well as environment. Try to make sure that there is early detection and early warning so that we are better prepared for future pandemic. And that's the key message, key recommendation I just want to highlight, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Gongal, for sharing your perspectives from the health side and emphasizing the mandatory reporting of specific diseases and the collaborative effort for surveillance as well. Last but not least, I would like to call WOA to share their conclusions.
Thank you so much, Lika. I think we've heard over the past couple of days a real mix of ideas, expertise and strengths to tackle this one issue. So this is really One Health at work, and the quadripartite is working together with countries to tackle zoonotic diseases like influenza. The World Organization for Animal Health, WOA, our mandate is on animal disease and welfare, animal health and welfare. We're a standard setting body, but also the organization is key for disease surveillance and information sharing. And you heard yesterday from Dr. Chantany about the official collection of information, mainly through the World Animal Health Information System, or WAHIS, where we're collecting information on HPAI in birds and mammals, but also through other channels such as self-declarations of freedom and direct communications with WOA delegates. We do receive information from wildlife, including endangered wild birds and marine mammals. And we see that the influenza virus is evolving. For example, the hooded crane is ranked as vulnerable. It has an estimated population size of 6,000 to 15,000 individuals, but over 500 were affected by avian influenza earlier this year. So that's significant at 4 to 9% of the total global population. So this virus is affecting not just people, not just poultry, but also really quite endangered species. And also because we're seeing avian influenza cases in mammals around the world, including marine mammals, it does make us more concerned that that this is, a time when the virus is really making that move towards affecting people in a more significant way than it already does. The WOA website, we have situation reports on HPAI that are published every 3 weeks and that provide an update to the general public on the situation around the world. At the last update, we had 1.5 million poultry birds that died or were culled during that 3-week period, which is obviously a severe blow for both animal health and also human food security. So this is an issue on a lot of levels. It's really important that we think about the work of WOA experts, but also our colleagues. For example, OFLU, which is the WOA and FAO Global Network of Expertise on Animal Influenza. We've also heard from some reference centres, both WOA and WHO experts. We have standards on avian influenza and various technical documentation that's been published, including guidelines and statements. But it's really important to think about this regional and global coordination. So thinking about the disease that's affecting different countries, different species, and thinking about intersectoral collaboration at the international level, the collaboration that we have with FAO, WHO and UNEP, and working together. It's been mentioned that HPAI is really important to WOA. We have an animal health forum on the disease at our general session in a couple of weeks' time, really trying to highlight that WOA and veterinary services have a vital role to play in disease detection and control. So WOA recommends that countries maintain their surveillance efforts, biosecurity measures at farm level, as we've heard about today, and also continue timely reporting of avian influenza outbreaks in both poultry and non-poultry species. We stress the importance of reporting outbreaks in unusual hosts because the virus has been increasingly detected in mammals in recent months, and that's a situation that should really be monitored very closely. And high quality information is key to support early detection and rapid response to potential threats to to both animal and public health. So hopefully over the past couple of days, we've heard many different ways that that can happen as we work together. Thank you, and back to Lika.
Thanks so much, Dr. Lisa, for your final remarks, and everybody who's attended this webinar. And we really hope that it's been insightful and that it can really spark that collaboration and key actions, as the speakers have just mentioned, as the key conclusions and recommendations going forward. We are hereby drawing to an end of the webinar, and I'd like to again thank all the speakers for their efforts and for those tuning in for the webinar. With that, I think we can close.
Thank you. So I think we can close the meeting, this webinar, and it was great to come together as quadripartite. And we also use our Center of Excellence, try to bring country perspective and try to update on new surveillance technique, as well as need of close collaboration between all sectors. So that is very, very important. Thank you very much. So now